Hey guys, this week we're celebrating Pride on the podcast with a very special guest, a dear friend of mine, James Fowler, who is this queer visual artist who has an amazing record collection, and we're gonna get into it. Hi guys, Randy here from the Vinyljunkie podcast, and this week we're celebrating Pride with one of the gayest people I know. He is an artist in Toronto. He is an amazing fella. He is James Fowler. James, welcome to the episode.
Thanks, Randy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we've been talking about this for a while. Like when I first wanted to do, this podcast a couple of years ago, I know we had a little back and forth discussion, and finally we are here. We're here. Life is no longer in the way, and and we're doing it. We're doing the thing.
We're doing the thing. Awesome. I love doing the thing.
Well, we've done a lot of we've done a lot of things together.
We have done a few things together. We did what was it? We did, I guess the first time I worked with you, we collaborated was on 10 by 10. That was like 2011. And you were like one of the first of the 10 cohorts for your listeners or viewers that don't know about 10 by 10. Started in 2011, and it was a way of celebrating LGBTQ Canadians in the arts. And I asked 10 photographers, you being one of them, to each take 10 portraits of LGBTQ Canadians in the arts for 100 portraits. And I did that for 10 years.
Which is amazing. That's like
it's
1,000
portraits.
1,000 portraits, 100 photographers.
Yeah.
But that is
So
not
if you're a photographer, I know a few.
that that is actually not the first time we collaborated, because there was another collaboration that you did with me, which is also numbers related. When I did that
Couples.
20 by 2, where it was like
Right. Wow. That's a minute and a half ago.
where it was
Yeah.
like 2 minutes every. So I was at this event for South by South West, where it's 20 by 2. So there's 20 speakers. They have 2 minutes each um, to answer a question. And the question that year was, what is the difference? And I as a photographer shot 20 couples and did this little kind of stop motion thing with different couples on the couch.
Right. That was fun. It's fun. That's a long time ago because
That's
I've been with my partner now, Rick, for 16 years. We're getting married in November. It'll be 16 years in November.
It's been 16
Uh,
years already. Jesus Christ.
has time
Oh my
flies,
God.
right?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
because that would have been in the early aughts when I was in aughts and that for that.
Yeah, that's like some way back stuff. Yeah, that was a really fun project. It was really sweet, and you put some music to it, and I thought it was really really cool. So yeah, and we'll collaborate again. We're collaborating now. We'll collaborate again in the future. You're a good person. It's always good to talk to you.
So one of the things that I didn't realize about you is that you have a record collection.
Dude.
How long have you been collecting?
Since I was a kid,
Yep.
I think the first record I bought was with my allowance was Prince's Purple Rain.
Okay,
Yeah,
nice.
I had Princess Purple Rain, and then I had Men at Work.
So
Uh,
Princess Purple Rain is actually turning 40 tomorrow.
wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I loved it, and then I bought it on. I had it on cassette too because we only had like I didn't have a record player in my room. We had a record player downstairs, And I wanted to listen to it in my room, so I also bought it on cassette.
So you were one of the early adopters of buying multi-formatted medium.
Yeah, it was. It was. I was. I went through that whole cassette phase. Like I was, as an artist, I was like, I would make like mixtapes for
Oh
people,
yeah,
and
for
I'd like
sure.
make meticulous things. And I kind of like it would be really, it'd be really great if like you could, just make a mixed vinyl for someone. Like, wouldn't that be awesome? Like you get something in the mail, and it's like, I made a mixed vinyl for you, and you like the cover up scotch tape, and that'd be great.
If it were only that easy, that would be amazing.
I think there's a service. I saw a service where you can upload a bunch of songs and they'll put it onto like a mixed vinyl for you. I think it's a little pricey. And then I don't know how they're doing it, like how you get around sort of copyright issues, creating an original vinyl. But anyway,
Well,
uh,
as long as you're not selling it, I assume. I don't know. I'm
maybe,
not sure.
maybe.
I know
There's like,
years ago, and it's not there anymore. But Sonic Boom used to have this guy in their store that did like limited 7 inches, and it would get etched there.
oh, cool,
I don't
cool.
know. I don't know how
Yeah,
that works, and I
yeah.
think, and I might be wrong on this, but for some reason in my memory, um, I feel like at Canada's Wonderland, they used to have like a recording studio where you could sing a
Right.
song,
Like
and they
a
would,
photo disc or something.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I remember this, and it's funny. It's funny like the rarities that come out, like when people collect vinyl and you sort of find weird things or whatever. And sometimes you'll go like a crate digging and you'll come across like somebody's like I found one that was it was a 45 and it was like it was a recording of some kids singing happy birthday to Natalie. That was
Very
it was like
very specific.
yeah, and it just said happy birthday Natalie on it. It's like what is this? So I don't know if you've ever done that, but I was in Cuba. There's a really great place on Neptuno. If you do go to Cuba, if you go to Havana, on Neptuno, there is a place you walk down the street and you'll see like cassette tapes on one side and some vinyl on the other, and you go through, and in the back there are crates and crates and crates of records, and so I follow this, and I think it was the year that like, or the year before Americans were allowed to kind of go to Cuba, and I was like, okay, I have to go to this place. I read it on some blog, so I go to this place, and sure enough, in the back are all these crates, and they're just filthy. Like my hands were filthy afterward. And they don't have a record player, so you can't actually like listen to see like the quality of it. So you kind of just have to go on like the cover art, right? And like, I'm such a visual person, so I'm like going through. I'm like, oh, that's really cool, '60s graphic, and I like put that aside. So I bought a whole bunch of them. And the one that I think I had told you about this was because it's Cuba and because the relationship that Russia has with Cuba, I found a Beatles Abbey Road record for a Russian audience. So all the labels on it are in Russian, and I was
Yeah.
like, I have to have this. This is great.
Well,
All the songs were in
it's
English,
funny because I,
but
I have my Abbey Road shirt on,
nice. I have
which
my
was
Redhead Gallery on.
which was not a setup, but yeah, that was one of the things that you had mentioned in the text that we had before.
Yeah, yeah.
So is your what can people find in your collection then? It sounds like
A lot of
um
jazz, a lot of big band. Artie Shaw, I love Artie Shaw. There's a little place up in North Bay that I go to. There's a guy named Todd that's got a place on Main Street, and I think it's called Waxman Records. And that's where my hometown's in North Bay. And so every time I go back, he always has like some new rare Artie Shaw. And I'm like, I will take that and I will take that. But I got a lot of big band stuff from, I did this art residency at this guy, and you actually know him, Joey Bruni. He was another one of the
okay, yeah,
photographers
yeah.
by 10. He works at CVC. Joey bought a big piece of property. He left the city just before the pandemic, sold his condo, bought 70 acres in Bancroft, Ontario, And so I was up there doing a painting. It was a commission. And so I spent 3 months up there in the middle of, this is a crazy story. So it's in the middle of the winter. I'm by myself, a half-hour walk from town, in this old farmhouse that like Joey was renovating, and it was like such a creepy farmhouse too, because like there were like locks on the outside of a closet door in one of the rooms upstairs, and it had like
Oh,
kids drawings on the inside. I was like, this is so weird. But the funny story about the music was, I would go into town where I was painting. So I'd walk into town in the middle of the winter, and I'd go for lunch, and there was like this like, it was like women's auxiliary something or other, and basically it was people that had passed away in the area would just basically take somebody's stuff and like dump it at this place, and then they would sell it, and the
yeah.
money was raised for like some sort of thing at their local hospital. Anyway, so I go in one day, like third day I'm there. I'm like, oh, what's this shop? I go in, and there's some vinyl, and there's like, of course, an Artie Shaw record. I'm like, okay, I will take that. They're $1.
Nice.
I go in the next day, get my, I became like a little bit of a habit. And the guy that was in there, he says, oh, you like vinyl? Come with me. And he takes me in the back, and it's this treasure trove. Like, it's so, there were 1, 2, 3 racks of boxes of vinyl. And I was like, oh, I'm in vinyl heaven, and it's like it's small town. Like, it's really funny. You go into the city, and you go and you like go to these like these vinyl exchanges and stuff, and it's like stuff that people have gone and sort of picked through and like picked really great stuff.
Hmm.
This had not been picked through, so there was just some gold in this in this massive collection,
Yeah.
and so one of the women that worked there, she sort of caught on because I would go to like the sub place next door, and I'd bring my sub over, and I'd sit on a crate, and I'd eat my sub, and I'd go through like, and I did this like every single day. And about like a week or two in, she comes to the back, and she's like, well, who said you could be back here? I'm like, you've been seeing me come in here every day, but okay. uh, One of the guys, and she's like, well, not all of these have been priced. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, how much are these ones? And she's like, well, those ones are going to be $2. And I was like, oh, it's going to break my bank. So I think I was spending about like 25 bucks a day, and I was just just pulling them out. But um, I got some really great big band stuff, and I got like, the old, what do they call like the 78s or whatever? It's like the
Yeah.
gramophone records, like the ones that if you go, they go,
They
they
break
blow
it.
up.
Yep.
So I got a bunch of these, and I didn't know. So there was another woman there. There was sort of this older woman, and she came in, and she's telling me this story about like, I didn't know where the phrase. I guess this is what she told me anyway. This could be a lie, but she said that's how that's where the word album came from, because I guess when they originally put out these 78s, there was like one song on each side, and it was like this sort of brown paper, and it would like
Oh,
fold
and they
over,
all come in an
and
album.
it was like a photo album, and so
Yeah.
that was the album, right? It was a record album, and it had like, so you'd buy the record album, and it was by like, Benny Goodwin or whatever, and so it would have like 14 songs and 7 records for your gramophone. So I bought a bunch of those as well, because I have a gramophone that I got. It used to be my uh, grandmother's. It went to like my dad's sister through my cousin, and then it ended
So
up
it's your
on my.
grandma's phone.
It's my grandma's, yeah, the grandma gramophone. So listen, and it's like got a crank on it, and it's hilarious because the crank only works so much to play about one song. So it's like you
And then you
crank
have
it in the
to.
morning, and you get to listen to one song, and then you like, okay, time to go to work. So yeah, so that's sort of. I mean, I collected vinyl as a kid. My dad, my dad, growing up, John Fowler, bless his heart. He was an audiophile. He worked in the Air Force on all the planes and like did all
Okay.
the tech stuff. And then when he left the Air Force after many years of service, he opened up a car stereo installation place. And so it was really cool. Like growing up, we had a record player and a stereo and stuff. But my father had also wired our entire house.
Oh my
Like
god.
in our kitchen, there's a car stereo in our kitchen that took cassette tapes, and we'd turn it on and like listen to the radio or listen to music in the morning. But my dad had like basically wired our entire house for sound, so you could go up and be like, I want sound in this room, or I want sound upstairs, which was kind of cool. Um,
What did all
yeah.
your neighborhood friends think of all that? Like when they would come over, it would be like,
Yeah, yeah. Because my dad was such a he was kind of he was mostly an audiophile, but he was sort of like into tech. Like we were the first kids. I was a kid on the street, and we had like everybody got VHS tapes, and we were
you
like
got
beta. And my
beta.
dad was like, yeah, and he was like, it's a far superior machine. He's like, you need to know excellence, James. I'm like, okay, Dad. Like,
We
you
had
can't
both.
write anything on beta.
No, my dad
So
had both, and we'd go to the video store, and he'd tape one onto the other, and
nice, nice. Yeah, yeah. Mm. So we were also like the first kids to have like a microwave, I think on our block, and it was just so funny. We get a microwave, and I was like, I'm gonna make toast. So I put bread in the microwave, thinking it made toast really fast. I was a dumb kid. So the whole thing about my dad is that because he was such an audiophile, he had a pretty decent collection. I remember listening a lot of like the Who and CCR and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and what else? There was it's a lot of sort of '70s folk kind of stuff, and so that sort of it was like music was really kind of instilled in me as a kid to like
hmm
always have music around, which is really interesting because I think that like there's people who are like they come from TV families and there's people that come from like music families. And you can always tell because if you go to someone's house and they come from a music family, there's always music playing in their house. Like they've always got like a record on or they've got something playing in the background. I've gone to people's houses who like they'll get up in the morning and they'll put the TV on and they like listen to the TV kind of in the background or like my partner, there's a huge difference between the two of us. He comes from a TV household.
Yeah.
And so his idea of getting ready to go out, he'll put on like an old episode of Murder She Wrote, and start getting ready, and I'm like, dude, this is put your pajamas on stuff. Like I don't want to go out. I'm like, I want to listen to some music and like, music
Is
is.
he even old enough to remember Murder She Wrote? I feel like
You'd be
that's
surprised.
even.
Yeah, you'd be surprised what he's into, like some old stuff. But yeah, so going back to my dad and having this sort of record collection. So what happened was for many years, as technology advances, we move on to cassettes and we move on to CD, and then now we have like non-physical music spaces. But my dad would always be like, "Vinyl is king. Vinyl is king," and I'm like, "Okay, Dad." But it's true. Like it's just like these records that he had, like they hold up. And so he gave me his record collection when I was living in Toronto and I bought a turntable. It was all right. It wasn't anything great. And he had his old one. So this is also really interesting. So my dad in our living room, he had built an entire wall and it had like this red jute fabric on it, like shag rug looking
Oh
stuff.
my god.
Big, and these big black float shelves made out of wood. Like my dad was building like IKEA float shelves before IKEA had before IKEA, well, maybe IKEA was around 'cause it's been around for a while, but so he had all of these like levels and one had a turntable on it, and then he had an old TIAC reel to reel on it, and he had his tuner, bunch of other different things. And it was like his kind of like his audio wall, right? And I remember growing up and just thinking it was so cool that like I'm like, how does that not fall off the wall? It's really heavy.
Yeah.
It's engineered it to make it work. So fast forward to probably about a decade ago now. He had all of his old equipment in boxes, and I was like, Dad, what's going on? Like, you haven't listened to vinyl in years. What do you? And he's like, take it, grab it, take it. And I got it home, and the amp turned it on, boop, nice hum. Reel to reel works perfect. The record player was an old Dual. Not so much. It was a little. It needed some love. And what's really sweet is my partner took. It was a holiday gift. He took it. He snuck it out of our storage locker and brought it over to a place called Ring Audio here in Toronto.
Okay.
It's like some dude and his son, I think, works there now, and they're like it's like a sort of a mom and pop kind of shop. And he took it in and got it cleaned and got it all like refurbished and stuff. And the guy said that like the grease on the bottom had like crystallized and stuff. Anyway, brought it home, plugged it into my dad's amp. It was like Christmas morning, and I was like a kid. I was like, oh my god, I get to listen to it on my dad's record player, which is really special for me, right? So yeah, and so then I have all my dad's, like, oh my god, the Who's Meaty Beaty Big and Bouncy with Boris. Do you know the song Boris the Spider?
No, I don't
No.
think so. No.
Oh, you have to look it up. It's like this total trip out. It's like there's this. It's like the story about this spider, and I think he like must have been like on something, but it's literally it's like now he's crawling up the wall, and now he's on the ceiling. Boris the spider. You're high. So yeah, so that's the kind of and like Pinball Wizard and like stuff like that. But
Well, speaking of your dad's setup, so
yeah,
I'm gonna pull up a picture here of your setup.
okay,
Um,
yeah. That's
so
that's
like
that's the records I listen to. I've got a few more downstairs.
also this isn't even the whole collection. So
No. So what happened was it's funny like in life you tell somebody like, oh, I'm really into elephants, and all of a sudden like your whole house is filled with
full of
elephants.
elephants.
Yeah, exactly. Or like people are like, oh, I have a couple of ducks in your kitchen, and the next thing you know, for Christmas and holidays and your birthday, people are buying you duck stuff. I let it be known that I was like into vinyl, and like my cousin who was moving to Europe, she's like, oh, I've got a couple of crates for you. I'm gonna bring them over. We'll have some wine. We'll go through them. And literally, she shows up. She has the back two seats of her minivan taken out and crates filled with vinyl. And
Oh my god.
we're bringing them in, and Rick's looking at me, and he's like, "We are not fucking keeping all of these. There's no way." In our little condo in downtown Toronto.
Yeah.
So that's the setup I have there. But then I have other stuff that's like I
So
just hold on to.
let's talk about this setup. If people can see this,
Okay.
it's like it's filed. Most people file their records alphabetically. Maybe they'll have like a jazz section that's separate, or
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, separate little sections. You, my friend, my artistic friend, have filed your records by color.
Yeah.
How do you
Yeah.
find anything?
Well, it's funny that you say it. So there's a spreadsheet that I have in my G Drive.
Of course.
That literally is like the artist, the name of the release, and then what color the spine is. And so I can go to it and be like, I want to listen to like the Cure Head on the Door, and I can go through. I mean, I know it's black, like just like Wham has a pink edge,
Yeah.
Wham UK. So you kind of what happened was as I'm doing this, I was like, I don't listen to all of these that often, but the ones that I do listen to. Like there's like most of the Smith stuff has like colors on the side, like Rank has a gold or orange edge on it. So like you learn over time
Yeah.
where your favorites are. But then here's the really cool thing that I love doing with this is I play a game with Rick. It's like I'll say to him, I'll say, pick a color. Like this is a way of kind of rediscovering your vinyl collection. Because what happens is people have vinyl collections, and then you're like, there's certain things you listen to, and then there's stuff that you completely forget about, like you don't even remember that you have it, and you're like, oh my god, I can't believe. Or like, have you ever bought you must have done this. You buy a record, and then you go back and you buy the same record, and then you're
I
like,
have
fuck, I
I,
have
I have
that.
I have a crate of those that I need to sell.
Yeah. We should, yeah, it's just like do a trader day. So I'll say, so it's just a way of sort of rediscovering my collection. Is I'll say pick a color, and so he'll say like red, and I'll say old or new, meaning old music or new music.
Yeah.
And new is sort of like anything from like 80s forward, we'll say,
Yeah.
right? And so he'll say new, and then I'll pick out three records, and then from there he'll pick the record that he wants to listen to. So, and then we'll usually listen to like all three records, but. And usually I'll do it in the morning or in the evening. It's like kind of a half a side thing, but so that's kind of how I use it. And I just think aesthetically it looks like so
Oh, it
much
looks
more
amazing. Like that.
right. But
It looks stunning. But like
yeah,
I, you definitely
yeah,
need to.
people,
You definitely need to learn that like that this album
yeah,
has that
yes,
spine. So like
yeah.
within the like the whites and the blacks or even like the blue section, are those alphabetical within their color?
So in the white section at the top, that first section, and you can kind of see that there's a little bit of a color difference. That's a lot of new
Oh,
stuff,
okay.
and then in the bottom in the center is a lot of like also new stuff, and then all that stuff that's beige, those are like that's a lot of the stuff that I got from Cuba. That's a lot of the stuff that I got from Bancroft. Like that stuff has seen some boxes and some days. So they're a little bit, you know. I mean, one of the things. What did I get? I got a Sarah Vaughan record when I was in Cuba. Oh, and this other thing that happened. This is hilarious. So I'm in Cuba and I hear about like, oh yeah, if you go like looking, you can find vinyl there. So we go to Matanzas. We're in Matanzas for the day. There's four of us, and I guess the two of the people that wanted to go to like the place that like Hemingway used to go and drink or whatever. So they go off and do that, and I'm like, I'm gonna go look, and I find this. You know, there's like you get into sort of the main square, and there's like all these people who like are like, do you want a guide? Do you want something? And you're like, usually people are like, no, and I'm like, I don't speak Spanish. I'm like Musica disc, and he's like, oh yeah, 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 and so he like talks to some other guy, and then they both take me away. I've got, I don't know, a few $1,000s worth of like camera equipment on me, and I'm like da 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 da, and so I follow this guy, and then this other guy comes out, and they talk, and he's like, yeah, yeah, and so I'm about 6 or 8 blocks out of the main area. I'm like on these back streets and stuff, and then there's this guy sitting down on the ground, and he's like says something to him. And he's like, "Oh yeah, yeah," and he gets up, and then they open up the gate, and he's like, "Come on in," and I'm like, "Okay." So, and all I hear is Jim, Jim, and it's Rick. Rick has been following me because he thinks I'm gonna get kidnapped or something. I'm like, I'm fine. You know, what am I gonna do? Lose some equipment? It's not, I'm a dumb tourist that way. So anyway, so I go in this guy's house, and across the couch, it's like, and it's this extra long, extravagant green kind of turquoise couch. It's all records covered in dust, all these records, and so I got a whole bunch of like Blue Eyes and. Yeah, I got some good stuff out of that as well. And it was really funny because it wasn't like he wasn't giving me a deal. He was like, "This one's like $10 and this one's $20," and I'm like, "You can tell I want some vinyl." Yeah, some of them were a little beat up, and so that's what you see in the picture. One of my favorite records is the Sarah Vaughan record. I'm sorry, I can't tell you the name of it, but she's on the cover of it. But I think she's on the cover of most of her records. So I found it there and I got it back. And you got to clean it. Like the thing is filthy. Like it's like, but there's also like just an aesthetic, like a good sort of audio aesthetic to a good record that has like those, like that. It feels old. Like it sounds old, right? And there's even people who like now they like put that sound into their recordings.
Well, it's funny because I always thought the snap, crackle, and pop were supposed to be a part of, like, as a kid. It's like,
Right.
oh, that's a part of it. It's like,
Yeah.
no, it's the record's just dirty.
The records are- yeah. So.
So, like, I know you do a lot of traveling for work, and you go places. Is Has this become kind of like a ritual for you now, like where, hey, you're in this
Yeah.
small town, or you're in this new province, or you're
Yeah, yeah.
wherever?
Whenever I travel, I always I always try to find something. We were just in Argentina. I picked up a couple records. Yeah, I always try to find something. It's really interesting. I learned this. If you go into a small town, go to the record store, talk to like a small record store, and they'll always be able to tell you what's going on in town. Like if you want to go see some indie bands, you go to the record store, talk to the record store guy, and be like, "Hey, what's going on?" Or like, I love going into a record store and be like, "Hey, what's good?" Right? Like you're gonna get lots of different musical tastes.
Hmm.
Um, I remember years ago, that's how I got into 10,000 Maniacs.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, in my tribe, and I bought it on vinyl, and I just walked in, and there's this old dude Barry. So this is, oh yeah, there's this guy. And what was it called? It was called, wasn't Play the Record, wasn't Rotate This. Was it Rotate This? No, it was in North Bay. People from North Bay would know this place, and I'm totally blanking on it right now. But there's this dude Barry, and he had like, and every Wednesday, new like vinyl would come in, and I came in, and I'm like, "Hey Barry, what's good?" And he's like, "This is really good. This is really good." So I bought it, and I was like, I was like in my teen years, and I was like, it's okay, I like it. But now I love it. Like
Yeah,
it's you know,
that's
um,
the thing. There's some records where at the moment it's not your thing, but then you need to discover this first and hear that, and then you come back to it. It's just like, oh my god, like this is
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. We have so many associations with different types of music. I know a guy who's an artist who, when he has people coming over to see his work, like do a studio visit, he'll intentionally put on Crowded House because Crowded House has it's a non-threatening kind of background,
Yeah, yeah.
like it's got like a little bit of like kind of some nostalgia for people, and they get that sort of warm fuzzy feeling, and they're like,
Hmm.
oh yeah, this is making me like music can sell stuff, like it's it's interesting. So but we're talking about travel. um, and when I was younger, again about my dad, we would when we traveled, like he would do the same thing. Like he would always like pick stuff up, or like he also would like he'd be like, I'm gonna buy this instrument. Like he doesn't play the bongos, but he had his set. He played guitar and he played banjo, and he was like a super music guy. But I think we were talking about my dad and what's happening with him right now. Do you want
Yeah,
to
yeah.
maybe talk? Yeah. So my father was diagnosed with dementia. Oh, geez, like 7 years ago. He was living out in the East Coast, and he was like hanging out with like the fiddle players and late night sweatbox stuff. But moved back to Ontario, and that's when I sort of got my vinyl from him, and as he's progressed in his dementia, music has been, I guess, with dementia, I don't know, I'm not an expert, but from what I have read, I guess there's sort of like a like linear memory, or like is based on sort of time. And so where he's at in his head, he's back when he was in the Air Force. And so,
Hmm.
but music has been a turnkey for him and for us. And so I bought him a little Bose speaker, and a little media player that like literally turn it on, press play, and I think we put on like 500 of his favorite kind of songs. Some, like I said, some old CCR, and some Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and some Simon and Garfunkel, and some
Yeah.
Hall and Oates. And what's so interesting, so he was doing these puzzles when he's in a home now, but when he was living with his wife, he would do puzzles, and I'd come to visit, and I'd put music on, and you could see it in his face. He'd be like he would just, and I for like 5 minutes I would have him back, like he was there, and he was so present, and it was funny because we were running around the table, and I was getting ready and stuff, and he just grabbed my arm and he goes, "Slow down, you move too fast." Like my dad is now communicating with me in song lyrics, has something to say. And recently I went up to he used to be a drummer when he was younger. He played drums in a band and drums in the Air Force, and so we went. I went up to see him at the home, and there was this big sculpture in the back, and it was like metal and kind of rusted, and it looked kind of hollow. And I said, Dad, we were like walking around the grounds, and I said, Dad, come on over here, come on over here. And I played drums in high school, so there's like a bonding moment there. And
Yeah.
I'm like, Dad, listen to this. And I went, bang, 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 bang. And he was like, his like eyes got all big, and he's like tapping on it. And literally, I'm like, we're doing a call and repeat. So I'm like drumming out patterns, and he's drumming them back. And he's like, he has this big cackly laugh, and he just starts laughing his head off. And it was like really nice that, like, even though he's not nonverbal mostly,
Yeah.
that I'm able to connect with him through music and through sound, and it's sort of as he's further deteriorating, it's still something that, like, it's a way for me to experience joy with my father, which I think is really special. So. Yeah, so music is like, since I was a kid, I remember like sitting on my dad's lap, and he would play the guitar, and I would like drum on the top of it. I was like, right, and like there's always records around. So yeah, so like yeah, vinyl's really been part of my life. Music and vinyl have like been a big part of my life for
Oh,
most of it.
it sounds like it.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna shift things a little
Okay.
to the art world. So I know you were
Oh.
saying earlier, um, you know, music sells things. And you've had plenty of art opening. Do you play like certain things for your openings? Is that something you think of when you open a show, or is it just kind of whatever the gallery owner just kind of throws on?
So when I'm curating something, it tends to be like something that's reflective of the exhibition. So curatorially, when I was doing like 10 by 10, it was all celebratory. It was usually a pride show, so it had sort of a bit of a kind of a party feel. We would have local queer DJs like DJing when we used to be over at Gladstone, now the Gladstone House. But this show that I have on now that opens Wednesday with June 26th at Redhead Gallery in Toronto. This actually has some original compositions.
Oh,
So
okay.
there's a piece behind me. This is an ice hut that is covered in 1900 granny squares that have been crowdsourced from around the world. And I've worked with a whole bunch of amazing craft people to put it together. The show is sort of about queerness and ice fishing, and there's a kind of where's what's in that nexus. But there's a piece of music that's in there that it's sort of very ethereal. It's some bells, some tinkly kind of sounds, and then there was sort of a more of like an old Chemical Brothers sort of track for this other piece that's behind me. So yeah, absolutely. Sound is very much in my thought process, and I listen to music when I'm painting, right? So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that music can really influence the look of a piece. Like I'll listen to maybe some dance music or something, but I've been listening to like a lot of sort of like Max Richter and Olafur Arnolds lately. So lots of
Oh,
like sort of
amazing.
quiet Icelandic kind
Yeah,
of
I love
some
him.
yeah, yeah. I got to see him in concert a couple of times here in Toronto, which is really great. And I have a bunch of his stuff on vinyl as well, which is super. But there's a vinyl there's a show I want to do. So again, going back to one's childhood, and I think all art making is it's somewhat autobiographical. It's a
Mm-hmm.
personal thing. So. Um, when I was younger, my mother worked, my father worked, and so I would go to a babysitter's place. And like it's so funny, like times have changed, eh? Like this is the mid 70s, and they have a 5-year-old walking about 5 blocks by themselves in Northern Ontario to the like I would like learn the path, and I would like walk to
Yeah.
the babysitter. Spend it was like I was the morning class, and so the afternoon I would spend with this woman. What's her? Holmes was their last name, and her husband was like a police officer, and they had three daughters, and the daughters would come home and they would tie me up with their scarves. We would play a game called Tie Up, where they tied me up and I tried to get out of it. I'm like, okay, so why are you into bondage? But how this relates to music is, I mean, I was kind of a bad kid, but there's a record that I found uh, called Obedience, and how it relates to this woman is, I mean, she would basically plop me in front of a TV and like do ironing and stuff like that, and I would spend my afternoons watching soap operas. And these
Oh my
soap
god.
operas, like it's really funny because there's certain soap operas that if you go back far enough, you can't find them. Like they've been taken off the shelf. They're like, and I think it's probably because uh, what's that thing where you think you remember something and like it's like the Mandela effect or whatever.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure that I remember watching stuff in the '70s, which was probably racy for today's standards. I don't know,
Yeah.
but I think there was probably like some baked in racism and some sexism and misogyny based it. I remember like people shaking, like these men like shaking women and being like, you're get a hold of yourself, Irene, and like smacking her in the face. I was like, what the heck? And so I was like thinking about like the things that children are exposed to in their childhood, like through television or through these sorts of things, and the kind of impact that it has. Like, there's these arguments around, people playing, the COD or whatever, like, and there's violence and blah 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 blah. And so I remember like looking back and thinking like, what I was exposed to like all of this like really violent behavior. Like there was always somebody trying to kill somebody, or like their plot lines were like always
Yep.
somebody's cheating on someone. Like these are like my earliest memories of what relationships were supposed to be. So like let's unpack that a little bit. So fast forward to when I'm in Bancroft, Ontario, and I find this record. It's shiny raspberry color. It's like that kind of like bright raspberry, and it's metallic, and it's got these two kids. I think they're sitting in front of a record player or something, and in silver letters across it says "Obedience." And so I'm like, okay, I have no idea what this record is, but I'm buying it just because the cover is great. And I get it home, and on one side, it's for parents and it's instructions on how to use the record. And on the other side, so the instructions are when you're putting your child to bed, tell them that you're going to like listen to this record with them and like let it play. And there was like one, I guess there was a whole series that came out. Like there was one for like confidence or whatever. Anyway, so the
So it's like
obedience.
subliminal messages underneath the music.
Oh yeah, it's so, and it's this kind of like music, and then there's this like woman, and it's like, your mommy and daddy love you, and you will do what they say because you can and you will because they love you, and it's like goes on and on like this whole side of the record. And I remember listening to it, and I was like whacked it. I was like, I can't listen to that. It's so freaky. Like I'm gonna be obedient. So I just thought it was like, and it's like, and she kind of has a bit of a sort of a southern twang to her voice, like this kind
Yeah.
of. Anyway, so I was thinking it would be really
I'm sure there are
cool.
people in our community who might find that record useful. I don't know.
Right? Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. It's like, hey, pup community. Uh, uh, so I was thinking about this record, and I really want to build a show around it, and sort of childhood experiences and exposure. And so I thought it would be really great to just have this. You can buy some of the old record players, the old vinyl players that they'll play, and it has a repeat on it. They don't have them anymore. Like they don't have a record repeat.
I got one.
And
it just it
so
just
the
keeps on
dual that
going.
I have, the dual that I have that I got from my dad, it has a repeat on it, so you can put it to repeat, and it'll play and go back, and then play and keep playing over and over and go again. I think it's great. But having that playing over and over and again, and like reconstructing like my childhood room, and then having like these TV monitors that look like you're sort of like surveillance monitors. Like there's like a room, and all it is like surveillance monitors. But on the surveillance monitors, finding footage of these old soap operas that I swear there was violence. There was like domestic violence stuff in them, and I think that that's why they've been pulled. But um, but having that kind of just really creepy, something really creepy. So we'll see what happens there.
That
But yeah, it's a weird record. Such a freaky record.
that would be a really good Nuit Blanche like installation. You come into this
Absolutely.
room and like
Yeah,
all this.
yeah, yeah. Weird. This kind of immersive kind of space. Yeah. Like do 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 do. You know, maybe I'll do that for Nuit Blanche. We did a really cool thing for Nuit Blanche last year that I did with a bunch of redhead artists here at the 401 Richmond building at Richmond West, 401 Richmond West in Toronto. Um, we took over the whole downstairs and we did a really cool thing called the Artathon where we were raising some funds for the gallery. And every hour for 24 hours straight, I produced a piece of 10 by 10 kind of little piece of artwork. And then we sold them sort of first come first serve. But we've been asked to come back again, so that might be kind of a cool installation to do. So something to think about.
There's always something to think about when it comes to art, right? You always find your inspiration everywhere. I guess when you're creating stuff in your home studio or your I guess just
My
outside
studio.
of your studio, um, is I assume you're listening to music all the time during
Yeah,
those.
yeah. I listen to a lot of music. You know what's been really great too is I started. I mean, I listen to music, but also I love reading, and I just as a person who spends so much time in my studio, I just don't have enough time to read all the books that I'd like to read. So, and my way of supporting authors, you know, I'll find a book and I'll use the Libby app. I think it's all over the U.S. and in Canada, but and you can download it for free, and then you hook it up to your library card, and you can get free books and audiobooks. So what I'll do is I'll buy a book, say it's nonfiction, and I'll start reading it, and then I'll go to the Libby app and I'll get the audio version of it, and so and me, I don't listen because the regular speed for most audiobooks is really slow
Yeah,
and deliberate. And
yeah,
I'm like, all right, I do not have enough time to listen to this. So I'm like, I put it on like, you know, like a a double time at
yeah.
least. So, and Rick came in my studio once and I was like listening to a book and it was really, really fast. And he's like, what the hell are you listening to? How are you able to pay attention to that? I'm like, you kind of, you know, you let the speed kind of speed up a little bit. You can listen pretty quickly. And so I'll do that. But yeah, I tend to listen to a lot of music in the studio. It's like, you know, we've been talking about this, and it's just such a, music has been just such a big part of my life. And like, you know, I remember like in my formative years, like, you know, this like young gay teen, I'd be like, I'm sad and no one understands me and I'm gonna cry and I'm gonna listen to the Smiths. And then the song would end and I'd be like, I need to listen to that song again and I rewind it and play it again. I'm like, okay, now I can continue.
I'm not laughing. You're laughing. Yeah, no, I totally understand.
Yeah, yeah. No, I spent my 20s I spent my 20s crying, and I think I spent my 30s being angry, and I think when I hit 40 I was like, I have nothing left to prove to anyone but myself. So, and at 53 I'm good, liking my dad's records, liking finding new stuff. That's it. That's a. I just got the new Kylie Minogue record. My friend showed up. She's
Attention.
like, "Hey,
Yeah.
yeah, this is my latest record." She's like, "Hey, do you have Kylie in your collection?" And I'm like, "I do now." She's like, "Actually, I was in. She was in um, Las Vegas, and she's, oh
Oh,
yes, I met
nice.
Kylie Minogue. I got her to sign my record, and so she brings me this signed Kylie Minogue record. I'm like, thanks, Robin. I think that's my newest, but and then I have like a laundry list of like stuff, like things that you bought like on cassette, or things that you bought
Oh,
on
to
CD.
replace.
You're just slowly adding to your library. There's a lot of like old Cure stuff that I kind of want to go back and get, and um, yeah, good times.
Nice, nice. So, James, as we're nearing on the hour here, why don't you tell people where they can find you? I guess you've already spoken about your show, but where can they find you online? Is there anything
Sure.
else that you want to promote?
You know what? Here's a couple of things. One is, if there are musicians out there that want to do some sort of collaborative work, I would love to collaborate with some musicians and do some sort of fun, like, I don't even know what that might look like. But like I said, like, music is just such a big part of my practice. It would be really fun to sort of collaborate and do some sort of
I
sound.
know a lot
I
of
don't
musicians, so
Yeah,
it's funny.
yeah, cool.
Half the people I've had on the podcast are
Other
musically
musicians?
inclined.
Okay,
So
great. Awesome. That's great. That's great. But you can find me online. It's IamJamesFowler.com. So IamJamesFowler.com. You can also find my work on the Redhead Gallery website. Redhead has been around for 27 years. It's the second longest artist run gallery in Canada. And so I think they started 27 years ago as a bunch of printmakers. And so I joined the collective last year. And so this is my first show here at the gallery. Like I said, I went up north. And I went ice fishing as a kid, and so living in a small town and being sort of queer, a lot of queer people kind of leave small towns because their safety is threatened. So what's really interesting is, as I've grown up, North Bay's grown up, and so I went up, and I had a great time. Some old friends took me out ice fishing, and so I put together a show, kind of imagining what it would be like to go queer ice fishing as opposed to not queer ice fishing. I don't know. Just kind of seeing what happens. So the show, like I said, it's the opening reception is June 26th from 6 to 10. Um,
this will
and the
this will come
exhibition
out
is on.
shortly after, so that they'll miss
Oh, okay.
that.
Well, then they're gonna miss it.
Yeah,
They're gonna miss
yeah, yeah.
it. You
They're
can
gonna
find
miss
it on. You
that
can
because
find it on.
this is coming out on
Okay, cool.
Friday.
Oh, it's coming out on Friday. So, well, the exhibition's actually on until July 13th.
Hmm.
But yeah, come by the gallery. The 401 Richmond building is really great. It's got a whole bunch of galleries in it. There's a photography gallery. There's printmakers that are in here. There's a whole bunch of artist studios. It's really sort of a really great hub, and the building has such an amazing history. So I'm really happy to be part of it. And definitely, I want to bring in. Maybe I'll bring in. I have an old record player that somebody gave me. Maybe I'll bring it in, and we'll have some vinyl in the gallery, and we can just play some vinyl.
Sweet, sweet. James, happy Pride to you and Rick. Good
Thanks
luck
so
on
much.
your opening on Wednesday. Thank
Thank you very
you
much.
so much for being on the show. I know this has kind of been a long time coming, and it means a lot to me that you are a part of this journey.
Awesome, Rennie. Thanks for having me on the show.
And if you guys like this content, love the podcast or any of the other content I'm making here on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. We're still a new channel, so any kind of subscribe, like, or comment, or any kind of engagement really helps. And share this video with a friend. So, James, make sure you share this out.
I will.
All
Thanks,
right.
man.
We'll see you guys soon.